Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to day 3 of Ramadan, which is also known as the third juz' day. So this is our daily, one juz' a day for perspective, problem solving, and practical and a proactive view of life. And we're taking the mountain view. So we're thinking about climbing up to that mountain and looking out on the world and really figuring out how we're managing our life based in the Quran. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli wa sallam barik ala Sayyidina Muhammad. All right. So we're starting today at the end of Surah Al-Baqarah, if you remember. At the end of Surah Al-Baqarah is about 9 pages of the juz', then we'll go to Ali Imran. And here is a beautiful, the closing of Surah Al-Baqarah is very moving to me. And it's really important as we're thinking about a view, the mountain view, because it really teaches us about perspective and how to think about things. It's really as we have gone through Surah Al-Baqarah, we have looked at really the way the Muslim Ummah is called upon to be, how we are called upon to be individually, and how we are called upon to be as a community. So as we close this section, we are called upon to review. It's like we're reviewing what it means to be a human being in the world. And of course, we have the Ayat al-Kursi, which is A'zam al-Ayah, the greatest verse of the Quran. And one of the things it does, this verse, is it reminds us of the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a very important foundation, or let's call it a very important step in getting to that mountain view, because we're learning about, when we think about who is Allah, who are we worshiping, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes himself in the Quran. And in Surah Al-Fatiha, we were reminded of the importance of Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim and the human response to it. But here now, we have a whole new reassurance of the strength of God and how we can rely on Allah Azza wa Jal. Okay, so this Islamic view, Ayat al-Kursi, Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayy al-qayyum, al-hayy al-qayyum. This verse, or these words, give us this complete assurance that the human being, everything around us, everything that is living, everything around us that we see, belongs to God. Belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so when we draw our values and our morals and our quality and our character from the understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's greatness, then our lives are settled. Our lives are settled. And of course, it continues with qualities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are not the qualities of human beings. Like, for example, that in English, neither slumber nor sleep overtakes him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, la ilaha illahu. And the rest of this verse that fills our hearts with belief so that our hearts are strong in belief. I remember when I was a young, brand new Muslim, I was driving a truck, a little mini truck. It was my dad's and I was borrowing it, and it was almost out of gas. And I remember I had just learned that Ayat al-Kursi was this powerful verse in the Quran. And I remember reciting Ayat al-Kursi with this dua connected to it, that the power of Allah's words would be stronger than the gas in the car. And the reason I remember that, and alhamdulillah, I don't remember much about that incident, but I remember that feeling of being able to rely on a verse in the Quran or a mention in the Quran of the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And because I was a new Muslim, it was very impactful to me, because when you become Muslim, one of the new things you get to have in your life is this book that is Kalam Allah, this book that is literally the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's a power in that I don't know, if you haven't experienced it, it's difficult to explain. I think whether you're a convert or a non-vert, you can sit with that and reflect on it and really think about, well, what does that mean for my life? That I have access to Kalam Allah. I have access to the words of God. It's really a very powerful thing. And it continues, of course, in this section where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we go to verse 258, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins to describe an incident with Ibrahim alayhi salam. And of course, Ibrahim as the prophet that we are the descendants of, learning his story and being reminded of the tawheed of his story was important both at the time of the Prophet ﷺ as well as now. And then there's that really interesting story at the end of the page that reminds us of the origin of life. SubhanAllah. The origin of life when we think about where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no, you've remained like this for 100 years in verse 259. Just going to get that open there. I should have gotten you ready for me to do that in the beginning, but that's okay. You can do that now. All right. Okay, so we have this story. فَأَمَاتَهُ اللَّهُ مِئَةَ عَامٍ ثُمَّ بَعَثَ. So the person who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had died for 100 years and then brought back to life. قَالَ كَمْ لَبِثْتَ. He was asked, how long have you tarried? قَالَ لَبِثْتُ يَوْمًا أَوْ بَعْضَ يَوْمٍ. A day or two, a day or some days, or a day or a part of a day. قال بل لبثت 100 عاما فانظر إلى طعامك وشرابك لم يتسنى وانظر إلى حمارك ولنجعلك آية للناس. So one of the things that Sayyid Qutb points out in Fidal al-Quran is how these three things in those 100 years, the decay was different for each group. And how that comes back and reminds us of the power of Allah Azza wa Jal in the origin of life and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who creates. Though He has taught us of the asbab, He has taught us of the causes, still, even with those causes that we know, it is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that puts life into anything, whether human or plant or anything. Now, when we go to the next section, it talks about it's like we're closing off this surah by talking about the economic system for Muslims. What are the fundamental features of our socio-economic system? And I just want to take a minute to let your heart connect to those words, socio-economic system, because a socioeconomic system is something we read about in academia, we study it. But what would happen if the world followed the socioeconomic system of Islam? And one of the things that would happen is that it would be a very generous world. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Muslims are the most generous community. There has been research now done about Muslims and our generosity in charity. And what we give. I was just at an event the other day that was talking about the amount that Muslim Americans give as a contribution to the whole of what is given in the year is not in balance to the number of Muslims. It is far more. So while our percentage remains small, what we give is larger than that. It doesn't surprise me. It shouldn't surprise you either. Because we are a generous people. And these last pages call upon us to spend our money. Like literally spend our money and become a living, dynamic agent in society. People who will spend and be generous and won't sit for an hour and think, oh, should I buy this? Should I do this? Should I do this? It's not abstract. The living of life when we are together is a living of generosity between us. And we learn that our concept of spending money and giving money is very different than the capitalist sense. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the example in verse 261. مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ أَمْوَالَهُمْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Okay, so the one who gives their money in the cause of God, كَمَثَلِ حَبَّةٍ, is like a grain. أَنْبَتَتْ سَبْعَ سَنَابِلَ فِي كُلِّ سُنْبُلَةٍ مِئَةُ حَبَّةٍ. The one who spends for the cause of God is like a grain that brings forth 7 ears, each ear of corn bringing 100 grains, or not ear of corn, sorry, or stalk, having 100 grains. And so, if you just do the math, the simple arithmetic, then you say, okay, well, a single grain of corn or wheat gets 700 grains. But here, it's a different picture that we're given. It's a picture of life. It's a picture of the multiplication of what happens in the world when we give fi sabilillah. And now it's Ramadan. I know all of you are planning to give if you haven't started already. Everything we give in this month is multiplied again and again and again. And what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us back does not run out. Yani, when we have this understanding, if our socioeconomic system was built on this, it would be a very different world. And there's proof of that in the time of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz in Damascus. There used to be barrels of dirhams, barrels of gold for people who were in need to take. And for weeks on end, they wouldn't even decrease a little bit. And what was the reason? I think we have to say there are 2 reasons. One is that people felt satisfied with what they had. They didn't have this inner need for more, which was what capitalism gives us, and marketing and the material world and secularism and all of this. And the other thing was that there weren't poor people. Like the people didn't have this need to have so much like we have today. And so that's the question in this metaphor. What is the spending when we spend fi sabilillah that grows in a way that doesn't only multiply, but brings life? Brings life. Why am I saying brings life? Because it's a seed. It's food. It feeds. So the money that you spend gives life to you and gives life to people. And especially in Ramadan. That's the opposite of money that's given in order to fulfill a vain or ostentatious or selfish purpose. So as you're giving, make sure that you're really thinking about your intention this month. And of course, you can give to Rabata. We're so happy to have you donate to us and help us to continue to grow this work. SubhanAllah, it's such blessed work. We're looking for 140 monthly donors at $40 a month. So if you see to being one of those people, you can be growing a whole farm every month. Every month is like a farm, because if one seed is growing all of this, then 40, if we consider $1 a seed. Just imagine. This is in honor of the 40 years that I've been talking about. So now, as we continue and about to finish up this verse, we go to the end, the last 3 pages, and we are reminded, we are getting a very, very serious warning about money. And that is the warning about usury or riba. الذين يأكلون الربا لا يقومون إلا كما يقوم الذي يتخبطه الشيطان من المس. Those who gorge themselves or consume usury cannot rise up except as he may rise up when Satan has confounded with his touch. And it gets scarier. It gets scarier. In the next verse, فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا فَأْذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ. So the one who does not put aside usury, فَأْذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. Then await a war. That war will be declared against you by God and His messenger. Now we are in a time where usury touches everything. There's debt everywhere. But we have the opportunity to control some. So I'm going to give you 3 things now in Ramadan to make tawbah for. Number 1, make tawbah for any time in the last year that you let your credit card go to the next month. Because that means you're dabbling in usury, even though you're not receiving it for yourself. But if you are in that position where you're letting it go every month, that means you're having to pay it. I know that credit cards have to be used in this society, but don't use it as something other than a debit card or something other than cash. Meaning, if you can't afford it, don't buy it. Remember Umar ibn al-Khattab, who said, كُلَّمَا اشْتَهَيْتُ اشْتَرَيْتُ. Everything that you feel like having, you buy. That's what happens when you go into debt. Do not go into debt to purchase things. Because now it's okay in the month if you're going to pay it off in that month. But if it goes to the next month, now you're paying interest. And in our community, I have found we don't talk about this problem. I have found a lot of Muslims are in a lot of debt. We're in student debt. We're in credit card debt. Now, student debt is a little bit different because there are some fatwas out there and people are working to, they go to school and they do that so they can study. I don't want to walk into that space, but man, to leave college with $100,000 in debt or $50,000 in debt is a lot. Our project here at Rabata, the university project, we're planning to do it so that the whole degree is only $18,000. Wedding debt, I never even heard of wedding debt. Oh my goodness, I didn't even know that was a thing. Yes, so this is a very serious page in Surah Al-Baqarah. I said I'm going to give you 3 things. Number 1, don't go into debt for a wedding or for buying something because you want to buy it. We want to stay away from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has warned us of. And the second thing is, of course, and I suppose I should have started with this, the most important thing is that you yourself don't take interest in anything. Go check your investments. Check your bank account. You yourself should not be receiving interest. There are other ways to invest. And I think I see somebody on here who's a financial coach. So there are other ways to invest where you're not taking interest. But check your investments. Make sure that you're not taking it. Ya Latif, we do not want to be of those who refuse to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, فَأْذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. Ya Latif, that's really scary. And Allah subhanahu إِن تُبْتُمْ فَلَكُمْ رُؤُوسُ أَمْوَالِكُمْ. So make tawbah and you can have your capital. So make tawbah. Let's not be paying it out and let's not be earning any interest. I said 3 things. I guess the third one will be, I don't have a third one, so we'll just say 2. Don't receive it and don't send it. This is the strongest warning. According to Sayyid Qutb, this is the strongest warning in the Quran. No other issue has been condemned and denounced so strongly as usury. So be very careful and take this very seriously. And as we finish up the surah, the beautiful, beautiful last page with the beautiful calling out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and asking Allah to make us of those who are not trialed more than we can bear. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve you and not let you be of those who are trialed more than you can bear. Let's go to the next surah, Ali Imran. It starts with a connection. It's really a beautiful thing in the Quran. If you start to read it, if you're reading it every day, maybe you're noticing it already. And if you're not, you can notice it. The way that the Quran connects So now we go to Ali Imran. Alif Lam Mim, the same first letters as in Surah Al-Baqarah. And then Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum. So we are reminded of Ayatul Kursi. So our ears perk up and we look and we say, oh, yes, Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum. So we move forward and we keep following along on this to learn more about what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaching us. And here, in this continuation of the third juz', now we move into, we're more in Medina, we're continuing in Medina. We're looking more at this cornerstone of Islamic faith, the types of revelation, and verse 10 on page 2. To 13, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks again about not being like the people who disbelieve. And here we have a sign of the disbelievers. And إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَن تُغْنِيَ عَنْهُمْ أَمْوَالُهُمْ وَلَا أَوْلَادُهُمْ. So sometimes we feel that our money or our children are those are our guarantees in life for safety. But they are not. They are not the guarantees of safety. And then further down, زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ شَهَوَاتِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ وَالْبَنِينَ وَالْقَنَاطِيرِ الْمُقَنطَرَةِ مِنَ الذَّهَبِ وَالْفِضَّةِ وَالْخَيْلِ الْمُسَوَّمَةِ وَالْأَنْعَامِ وَالْحَرْثِ. These are the things that the human being becomes, our desires go out to. And in English, verse 14, they are alluring to the human being. Our desires are in spouses, offspring, heaped up treasures of gold and silver, fancy horses, cattle, property, plantations, property, farm life. ذَلِكَ مَتَاعُ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. These are the things that make life comfortable. And we can substitute a car for the horse. We can substitute a fancy mansion. We can substitute a condo in downtown Chicago. Whatever it is that makes you feel like this is what we need. But these are false comforts. All of these things are false comforts. I often meet women who are almost desperate for a husband. And while may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you the rizq of a husband, Ameen, it's not, that comfort is a false comfort. Because the only real comfort is your comfort with Allah Azza wa Jal. Other women will tell me, I just need children. If only I had children. That's also false. Children will be a trial sometimes. Others who tell me, if only I had enough money, endless wealth. It's a false comfort. All of these things are false. These heaped up treasures for their own sake don't give us anything. Only when we give them and we carry them forward into the next life. But the only way we do that is by giving them fi sabilillah. We continue to learn more in this juz'a about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm going to jump ahead a bit because we go then to the story of Isa and Maryam and how Maryam is born and devoted to the temple, and Zachariah is put in charge of her. And this story, I think it's a really important story for us to reflect on today as we are looking at our third day of Ramadan. Because Maryam, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with her, was a person who carried a great burden for the sake of Allah. She was cloistered in the temple. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave her her own rizq. When we cloister ourselves away from the things of the dunya that take us away from Allah, Allah gives us rizq. So trust that. Most importantly, Angel Jibreel came to her and told her she was going to carry this child. Now we share this belief with the with some Christians around us. Not every Christian believes that actually anymore. But we know the angel Jibreel came and told her that she would carry the next prophet, Jesus, Isa. I often reflect on what that was like for her to carry such a great amana and such a shocking thing to the people. Today, when you are trying to be a religious person, it can feel shocking to your family. It can feel shocking to your friends. It can feel shocking to the community because we are in such a time of secularism and distance from Allah. But you can do it. Like, make yourself strong. Be strong. Hold on to the memory of Maryam, alayha salam. Hold on to her memory and think about what she had to endure to carry forth this great prophet, Isa, alayhi salam. And think about how Tawheed has been walking through the centuries. Tawheed. And we are celebrating now in this month, we're celebrating Tawheed because we're fasting for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are doing good deeds for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we remember Maryam and what she started in her carrying of Isa. And her, and Zakaria himself. And that's another type of fasting that is mentioned. It'll be mentioned again later. But how one of the signs that Allah gave him is that he would not speak. So he fasted from speaking. And so that is another thing to think about. Are you fasting from speaking in this month? Of course, you're not fasting from speaking completely because we have to talk. But fast from all of the words that are inappropriate. You should not be swearing in the month of Ramadan. Don't be lying. Don't mock people. Don't say things that hurt others. Don't tell stories that are not yours to tell. In this month of Ramadan, learn to be quiet. Learn that it's okay to not say something all the time. Most arguments are started because one person can't just be quiet. And sometimes you have to ask yourself, do I want peace or do I want to be right? You can be right in front of Allah without making the whole world know that you're right. So keep that in mind for each day. We're moving now to tomorrow's, this is the end of the third day. We'll be praying Taraweeh for the fourth day tonight, moving to the fourth juz'. And as we just close it off, this is it. Let's remember, now we finished Baqarah. So we finished that whole surah that fights against shaitan. We're in a month that fights against shaitan. We have been reminded to be careful of our money because money easily is a door of shaitan. So let's, in this month, really make tawbah, work to get out of debt, work to pay fi sabilillah, work to feed people, donate to places, help people, and make sure to donate here at Rabata. Become a monthly donor. We're looking for 140 new monthly donors by the end of the month. That's just, 30 into 140, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's like 4 a day. So we just need 4 every day from you here on Instagram. If 4 of you appreciate this content, then please become a monthly donor. And remember as well that as you are a monthly donor, you are helping all of the work of Rabata and all of the beautiful work that we do to uplift women, to reach that vision of the Muslim woman, teacher, leader, community steward, the rising tide of Muslim women carrying forth that positive culture in every corner of the world. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Thank you so much, everyone. See you tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum.